So you heard about what the transit agencies want. Now let's hear what lawmakers are willing to give them. Joining us to talk about these ongoing negotiations are State Representative Eva Dina Delgado, a Democrat from Chicago, State Senator Ram Vilivalam, a Democrat from Lincolnwood and Skokie, and State Representative Brad Stevens, a Republican from Rosemont. Thank you all for being here. So Representative Delgado, you heard Chairman Dillard say he wants $1.5 billion. Are you prepared to give it to him?
Well, I think before we start talking about that, we have to talk about the reforms that need to happen. I always think about transit from a rider's perspective. So what are the things that riders need right now? And primarily, first and foremost, people want a safe, efficient mode of transportation that gets them where they need to go. And I think we have some work to do on that right now.
Senator Vilivalam, there are reports that you all are close on a deal, specifically that would give RTA maybe some more power here. Can you tell us where things stand right now?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I would say that there's been consensus, generally speaking, on the concept of centralizing a lot of responsibilities into a central authority. And so we talk about eliminating the silos. We talk about prioritizing user experience, as Representative Delgado said, to make it safe, reliable, accessible. And that really starts with making sure a central authority has the ability to prioritize capital projects, to implement a region-wide fair policy plan, and so much more. And so we are having those discussions. We've been in uniform and lockstep as the House and Senate to really stick to the principle of no funding without reform, and that's what's going to happen.
Representative Brad Stevens, you're Republican. You are in the minority party, but I know that you've been actively involved in transit here. How much do you think the state will have in its coffers to give to the region's transit systems, and will it be enough?
Well, that's a great question, but as both of the others on the call here with us stated, it starts with the reform. I heard the governor loud and clear in his budget address. There's no money without the reform and the governance. There's got to be some efficiencies there. And as they both said, we need to have safe, effective transit for everybody. I'm in a unique spot because we in Rosemont, we connect with all of these transit groups, and it's important for not just our community, but as the center hub of the region.
So how else are folks going to get to the All-State Arena and all the convention space out there? Mayor Brad Stevens, which you mentioned, you're also the mayor of Rosemont. Representative Delgado, we heard Senator Vilivalam talk about more power in a central agency. I know that one of the proposals was to abolish CTA, Metra, Pace, and merge it all into one. Is that likely going to happen, or are we going to see something else?
I think the most important thing to talk about here is integration, right? You want to make sure that no matter what system you take, you're able to get from one to the other seamlessly. You can find your way easily. It's easy to pay with your phone because everybody uses their phones these days. And you get all of that information in one central location. What I can tell you is that today, that just doesn't happen. We have 3 different systems that work almost entirely in silos. And then we've got an oversight agency that doesn't actually require anybody to do anything different than what they already do. So I think, the most important thing that we're talking about here is integration. We want to make sure that folks are getting a better system and a better service, because at the end of the day, it's about the rider experience. And it's also about making sure we're providing the best system we can in the most efficient and effective way.
All right, well, Senator Vilivalam, we talked about these. It sounds like there's just a lot of repetition here where the RTA, it's unclear to me how it differs in its responsibilities from the separate agencies, CTA, PACE, and Metra. I know that you have been supportive of merging everything into one. The governor's kind of chilly to that. So what do you think a final proposal is going to look like? Is there a chance that everything would merge to one?
I would echo a lot of what Representative Delgado has stated. To the everyday person, the person that relies on public transit to get to their job, their school, their doctor, it's agnostic for them as to what platform and what's the name of the service board or the name of the central authority. What matters is how do they get there safe, reliably, and accessibly. I think there has been an acknowledgement that the service boards have certain place in what they provide in terms of service. That being said, the real reform is going to ensure that if the peak Metra train leaves from Naperville or Deerfield at 8:05, the central authority tells the Pace bus to arrive at that Metra station for residents to be able to utilize it 10 minutes prior to that peak Metra train. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that is what we're looking for in terms of a central authority, whether it's RTA or not, that they have that ability to ensure service standards, to ensure that there's integrated fares, integrated usage of all of the service.
So it sounds like the final bill here is going to have some kind of central authority, some kind of efficiency, even though the separate agencies will remain. The RTA or whatever it is going to have more power, and I'm sure riders would love to see more coordination between Metra, Pace, and CTA. Let's hear from Mayor Brandon Johnson about what he would like to see transit funding look like.
The region that generates 87% of ridership has to receive its fair share in funding. That's not, an unusual ask. That's been the ongoing, characterization of the people of Chicago and the region since Mayor Harry Washington.
All right, so what Mayor Johnson is saying, Representative Stevens, is that 87% of the transit riders are in this region, then it should receive 87% of the state's transit funding. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we have to look at that holistically. Each of these agencies does a fair job of doing what they do. I think the governance has to be part of, the sum of all parts. There's also those riders that are CTA riders that are connecting to a Pace or a Metra mode of transportation. So I think that's got to be looked at. But again, it's got to be an overall overarching governance of these systems where they speak well to one another and they coordinate the rides.
All right, Representative Delgado, say that CTA, Pace, and Metra and the RTA, they accomplish all these things that you're looking for them to do, more efficiencies, save some money. How much money is Springfield willing to give them, and where is that money, where is that funding going to come from specifically?
I think everything in its time, Paris, right? We really need to focus on these reforms, making sure that we're creating a policy that is going to get us to success. And then we'll take that next step and start talking about what the investment should be. I think no matter what we do, investing in transit is an important and good thing, not only because in a city and region that we're in right now, it helps move people faster. But I think also when we talk about climate change and trying to encourage folks to take transit because it's the greener option, that's what we should be striving for here.
All right, Senator Villi Valem, a lot of this is focused on maintaining the system as it is, or at least making it run a little more efficiently. But what about the future? If you go to Europe, you go to Asia, these transit systems run trains 3 to 4 minutes. They're always on time. How do you produce a vision where the state can help fund an expansion of public transit?
That's a great question. And first, let me start by helping to address the last question as well. We had 8 committee hearings in the Senate Transportation Committee, over 35 hours of testimony. Paris, not one person testified in opposition of fully funding public transit and making sure that there are reforms. From the business community, the labor community, the environmental community, the Collier County chairs, the mayor of Chicago, everyone knows that we need to get this done. And so I just want to point that out because that's how important this is to our entire region. And I would argue the Midwest, you could argue. In terms of your question, this has absolutely been the focus from the beginning. and it's been on not just filling a budget deficit for next year, but what does the system look like for the future, not just next year, but the year 2050. And that's also how we're going to determine the level of funding. What we've been consistently asking and receiving information from the agencies on what level of service will be provided for what level of funding. And we're asking CTA, if we require more bus rapid transit routes, what does that look like? We've been asking PACE about more pulse lines. We've been asking Metra about more frequency. So that is the goal, is to get a system, quite frankly, like as you mentioned, in other countries like Germany, for example, that have one fare, one network, one timetable, and do so for the year 2050, and not just to do it piecemeal and have to come back and deal with this again. That's not what we want to do. We want to make this work for every rider in the Northeast Illinois region, and we don't want to reach a crisis point where we have to come back and come back and come back.
All right, Representative Stevens, final word with you. Is there going to be a package that has the votes to pass this session?
Well, I think that there's got to be, and I think that $1.5 billion is maybe a little bit on the high end. We're in the budget process right now, but I definitely think that we've got to do what we can to avert this fiscal cliff. But there's also got to be a lot of heavy lifting on the other side from the agencies.
All right. Well, thank you to all of you. We'll keep following this, and we are back to wrap things up right after this.